Chapter 13. Sell Shefa Kai. Bard called out as he entered the lower levels of the tree. He found Kai on edge, whimpering and somewhat pacing, except he seemed pained. Was this what Amir thought was restless? Bard rolled his eyes and walked over. Kai ducked his head as if embarrassed. Feet hurt? Bard asked playfully. Kai's head fell even further. Bard rubbed it and then guided him to lay on his side and off his feet. He moved down to the underside and checked the footpads. They had traversed an impressive distance that day, and Kai did have a few red spots on the base of his footpads, but not so much that he would be walking like that. Bard chewed on his lip as he came closer and moved some of the fur by the pads around. Hunting. Kai's retreated instinctually. Kai, hold still, Bard growled as he chased. Kai whimpered an apologetic tone and Bard tried again. He spotted what looked like a thorn before he felt a swift kick to his legs. He toppled over and laid still for a bit. He looked at Kai with a stern expression. This time, Kai held extra still as he moved to him, and didn't move as he checked all his feet. A twitch, here and there, but Kai kept it under control. Bard located about 3 large thorns and 6 small thorns in the feet of his companion. He sighed and fetched some tools from his packs. Is Kai all right? Sen asked as she came down. Just a few thorns. Do you mind making him some medicine to keep them from getting infected? Sen nodded and then disappeared to retrieve the medicine. When she returned, Bard was flat on his back, moaning, and Kai was as small as he could get, nearly tucking his feet under him. Oh Kai, if you don't let him remove those thorns, you'll fall behind, and who knows if the shades will get you, Sen soothed as she patted his head. Kai's response was a mournful hum. Bard grumbled and Sen flitted over to him, helping him sit up. There was a bit of a bruise on Bard's cheek, and he knew it would hurt more tomorrow. At least, he hoped it would start hurting after his sleep tonight. I'll get some aged sour fruit, Sen said after a bit. Vinegar? Bard asked, recognizing the concept. Is that the word you humans use? Sen asked. Yes, I think it's called vinum acetum, in Dryadic. Right, Bard said. Sen chuckled. Of course you know that word, she muttered as she left. Bard watched her go with Kai, and then glared at the oversized wolf. Kai tucked his tail and then extended one paw. Bard watched with a raised eyebrow until Kai's tail relaxed. He then moved a bit closer until he was at Kai's extended foot. He shifted it and then found the thorn he had attempted. He shifted the metal tool around and then began the process of removing the thorn again. Kai retracted a few times, but they managed to get it out this time. Bard slowly began work on the others, and Sen returned with the medicine. She applied the vinegar to some thin bark and placed it across Bard's cheek. It was cool and felt nice on the bruise, if not a bit sensitive. She then applied medicine to Kai's injuries, and they worked together to take care of Kai. Once done, they retired to their resting spots. Bard slept with Kai, while Sen slept in her room. The next morning came and Kai was doing much better, but Bard was much too tired to focus. He strapped himself down and tied himself to Kai as he rode, letting himself rest. When they stopped, Bard was surprised to see the edge of Perspective's wood down the slopes from them. What had taken the bird and Kai just over 3 days to traverse, took them only 2 to return to. He reached Amir and Elwood and encouraged them to move down, instead of stopping for the night. It would be safer in her woods, even at the edge. While the dryads made camp, Bard rode with Sen towards the humans. He found them with Perspective. Some were even receiving tokens. Bard, Sen, you're back, Elvira said. Others joined in and approached them. Many asked how they were doing, and some asked if the dryads had come. Bard looked back and could barely make out the silver branches of the trees. They did. See the silvery branches, Sen said. Tomorrow, they'll come over here, Bard said as his eyes swept around the group. How many have tokens? He looked at Elvira, who smirked. A few kids received them right off the bat. That made some adults a little foolhardy, Ruger chimed in. But we have over 30 adults who have full tokens. How many approvals tokens? Sen asked. Bard was about to refute and then Sen shut him down. Another 15, Elvira commented. Bard paused. And we have them too. A few kids came, showing their tokens. Bard noticed the ones with tokens looked more peaceful and happy. Some of the others looked away, embarrassed, others a bit bitter and angry. There were a few who wore expressions of disappointment, yet hopeful. It's good to be with you all again, and I appreciate the efforts you have taken to receive your own tokens. The Dryads will also be joining you in this endeavor, Bard said loud and clear. But why? Someone spoke up. Why do we have to do this? Another asked those who have tokens. Do you understand this? Bard prompted. Someone jumped up and spoke. Because when you gain perspective, it's easier to try to understand others, and we want coexistence, not rivalry or infighting if this is to work. It was a teen's voice as it cracked in the middle. Bard was impressed with the answer. It's mostly correct, Bard corrected. There is a point to having commonality between everyone, and being token bearers will help start to build that. We also want everyone to grasp the purpose of this place, and that means holding a different perspective than we did in our old home, Elvira said. Bard held his hand up for her to stop. But it's late. We can discuss it more tomorrow. For now, Sen and I would like to rest, Bard said as he held out his hand to her. She took it, and he looked about for a place for them to rest. Kai curled around them and offered them some protections. Eventually, the lights of the campfires went out, and all they could hear was the hum of the forest. Bard noticed Sen shifting and then felt her absence early in the morning. She was always an early riser, but today felt a bit different. He looked over Kai and saw her walking towards where Ruger and Elvira dwelled. They came out and greeted her before heading inside. Bard felt sleep claim him despite his curiosity, and he slunk back into Kai. When morning came, Bard climbed out and found Sen waiting for him. They rode out and had the Dryads join them, but without the silver trees. It was strange seeing them in a different forest. Amir had them bring gifts at Elwood's suggestion, as Sen had described the human situation a bit more. This act seemed to soften the humans a bit more, and they greeted the Dryads as friendly as they could. While everyone began their instruction with elder perspective for the day, Amir and Elwood gathered with Sen, and soon Elvira and Ruger joined. So where is this place we keep hearing about? Amir asked in Dryadic. I assume it's not here. His words paused as Elvira and Ruger looked a bit helpless at him. He wants to know where the village will be built, Elwood clarified, and Sen offered a wan smile at her father. That we can be helping with. I go fetch the maps, Ruger answered before darting off. Appreciated, Elwood said. Elvira, Sen spoke up. This is my dad and my grandpa, Sen introduced. Amir and Elwood, she re-spoke her words in Dryadic. Elvira greeted them. And this is Elvira, the daughter of the previous chief of the Tekka, Sen introduced. Ruger came back with a large roll and Sen introduced him as well. While he was introduced, he placed the roll on a large boulder nearby and Bard helped him unroll it, placing rocks on the corners to keep it open. Bard had them gather around the map and Amir was shocked at the appearance. Elwood, having seen Bard's rough sketch before, was not surprised. We'll set up the new village here. He pointed on the map. And currently we are here. Sen translated to her father as they spoke. Elwood and Amir asked all sorts of questions about the place. Why by the mountains? Why that spot exactly? And so on. The place has a route near the catfolk caravans on their way towards the eastern human settlements. They travel through there in spring before looping back to their home city. It would be logical to establish trade with them as they gather sunstones in abundance. Bard started to explain. The lay of the land was good for farming and settling the trees, along with the mountains being nearby for human craftsmanship. There was a good river that flowed through there from the mountain snows, and the herds typically migrated through there since there wasn't a lot of shade activity in the area. That last tidbit was a welcome point for both groups. There are also some ruins of a city over here, far enough that I'm not worried about it for children and most residents, but close enough we could send some folks out to scavenge for useful materials, Bard said. Ruger jumped up at this excitedly. It'd be a good idea. I nearly finished exploring the other ruins. Good to get a fresh start. Bard smiled before sharing more of what he knew of the area. There were a few warring tribes who ventured in the area, which made it more ideal since it wasn't contested territory. What sort of flora and fauna should we expect? Elvira asked. Bard paused. The catfolk mentioned there are plenty of herbs they use along the mountains and valleys in this general area. It apparently has some small changes in weather depending on where you are at, so we could use that to our advantage to cultivate different plants that we are used to as well. Supposedly, the catfolk said there used to be some mines in the old days, and that there is plenty of ore as well. but I'm not sure on the specifics. That'll be something to explore later. Ruger chimed in. As for the herds, there are deer, elk, bison, and merlins. Bard said merlins. It's the main beasts that catfolk capture and tame to use in their caravans. Bard answered. Oh, those, Sen said quickly. I wondered what they were. They discussed at length some other things before Bard drew a scribbled map of the valley he planned on settling. He showed where he thought the humans could establish themselves and the dryads, after they coordinated needs based on the map. Elwood and Elvira sent some of the humans with tokens to go scout the area with the horses. They gave them sunstones and other resources. Sen spoke up. What should we call the place? Ruger began to speak, but Elvira stopped him quick. How about Digond? No, I'm afraid the dryads won't be able to say that. Elwood said. What does it mean? Sen asked in our old tongue. It means abundance. Elvira said. Well, we certainly can't say even that word for most dryads. Elwood paused. Sen translated for her father. Then what do you suggest? Bard asked calmly. What about abundsha? Elwood asked. Well, it's not bad. Elvira bit her lip. Too dryadic. Bard offered an Elvira ducked her head. It's a bit it sounds too much like normal dryadic speak. I feel it would get easily lost on us humans. You chose an old word, so you would prefer one the dryads don't use often. Or that it sounds far removed from their normal talk, Bard offered. Ruger and Elvira nodded. He looked to Elwood, who shrugged. It's a fair point, Elwood said, his horns shaking a bit. Is there another language we could borrow from? Sen asked as the silence stretched. Bard thought on it for a bit. Does anyone know catfolk? He asked. The dryad somewhat nodded, and so did the humans. Oh, I heard a pretty word from them. But why would you ask if we were familiar with catfolk languages? It's just to move away from any of the languages of human and dryad. I think that would be best. Bard said. Best to keep it more neutral, right? Elvira prompted. Bard nodded. I heard the catfolk say Sal Shefa. Would that work? Sen asked. Bard paused. He knew those words. Then it sunk in his head and his eye grew wide. Sen, no, you probably don't know what that means. Does anyone know what Sal Shefa means? Bard asked. Elvira nodded with a content smile. It's a greeting among some catfolk. They explained it once as prosperity. Yes, prosperity and abundance. Bard said. Sal Shefa. Amir said easily. Sal Shefa. Ruger tried it out. Bard and the others looked at one another. Seems easy enough and would be indicative of what we are trying to build. A place of prosperity for our people, one with abundance and peace. Bard said. Well, if that's decided, we will build Sal Shefa, while you take Sen and go and finish your engagement, Elvira said, moving to Bard and grabbing his shoulders. As Sen finished translating, Elvira grabbed Sen as well and urged them to move. Wait. It is very important you two finish that process. We can handle things here, Elvira said. Bard looked back at the others and Elwood was speaking to Amir before he nodded as well. Bard wasn't sure what to expect when they returned. Kai refused to budge, and Elvira wanted to urge them on. Sen stepped up and said that while Kai rested his feet, they could repack and arrange their supplies. Especially now that they had an idea of what the journey ahead would be like, it would be a good idea. Bard was still a bit hesitant. There was much to figure out, but as Elvira left, Sen grabbed his hand and he sighed in defeat. He had a suspicion that Sen had talked with Elvira beforehand, when she had gone to them early in the morning. The next days were a flurry of activities as they prepared to leave. They did participate in the nightly giving of the tokens while they were there, and it moved Bard to tears to watch the camaraderie the two groups were building. He expected problems to arise as they stayed around each other, as it was a given, but for now, this was a delightful sight. Sen mentioned that Elwood was teaching the humans and dryads each other's language, and it was very fulfilling to him. This was the last bit of news he heard of before they departed in the early morning mists.